welcome to another video review with me and my dad here, and behind us is a special guest, and the reason why he's here is because this series of toys from a cartoon from the 1980s is where we need him to help us, and because he knows more about it than me and my dad here.
Okay, for y'all who don't know, we brought in a special guest. He's going to help give us information that we don't have because we only know so much about this one area. So we had to bring in somebody else who knows exactly what's going on because we only know half of the puzzle. We don't know the whole puzzle. So that's the reason why we brought him in, because we needed some other expertise in it. Now, if you're wondering, have I got my ears lowered? Yes. Now, I don't know if y'all ever been in this situation to where you thought you could do something and then you tried it and you was really wrong. You found out that you couldn't do it. Well, I found out I'm not a barber. So you could just leave it at that. So anyway, I did get a haircut, if you're asking. Yes, I did get a haircut, but a barber I'm not. And we're just going to leave it at that. So anyway, some of these guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So this is a review of the cartoons of the 1980s. We will be taking a look at the 1980s toy line, and we will get some other expertise because we only know a little bit about it, and this is based off of the cartoon, but it was actually a game. And that's where I fall short and my son falls short of as far as the game. We know of the cartoon. He knows of the game. So that's where we need him because we only know a very limited knowledge of it. So with that said, we're going to take the camera, we're going to turn it around, and we're going to show you what we're talking about. So y'all stay tuned, and Colton, what do you want to say before we turn the camera around? What do you want to say?
Could I, like, introduce our
Sure, sure.
And our special guest here that we have behind us is named Brandon.
Yeah.
You want to say hi?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Brendan. I'm a good friend of Donnie's, and I've watched the channel since day one. Donnie contacted me and was like, we have this review coming up. Can you help me? I said, tell me the date. I'll be there. And so I can't wait to open this up with you.
Yeah, because he has the expertise that we don't know about that he's going to help us with because me and my son, we only know so much. And I think we've already said that. So anyway, he's going to be helping us review these next couple of figures. So y'all stay tuned. We will see y'all here in a minute.
Stay tuned. And here we are at the reviewing area, and here are these figures here that we're going to be reviewing, and this will be split into 3 parts. So this will be part 1, and what we're reviewing here is the 3 Dungeons and Dragons characters here.
So these are 3 Dungeons and Dragons characters, Colton. So this is from the 1980s cartoon, right?
Right.
So we have 3 of them here to go over, and like he said, this is going to be in 3 parts. So, with that said, we're going to get on to the first one. We're also going to check out the articulation of each of them, their weapons, and we're going to have our help here give us some knowledge and some information on why these characters look the way they do from the 1980s compared to today. And he's going to help us out here and there where we don't understand. So y'all hang on for this next ride. Here we go.
So, I think the first figure that we're going to take a look at is... I think we'll go ahead and go with this guy, which is named Hank, and that their names are on the bottom left or right corner here.
Right.
And all of them do have their names on the bottom right hand corner. And the other one is Diana. And the third one is Bobby and Uni.
Uni, that's right. Yeah.
Which is the unicorn here.
So, let's go ahead and take Diana and Bobby out the way, and we will take a look at Hank, and I am going to back out and let Colton do the review of Hank along with the special guests that we have.
And first, I will have to move the camera a little closer, but I will have to do like a little jump cut here. So here we have Hank from the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, the one from the 1980s. Now, but before we get to the figure, I don't know much about the Dungeons and Dragons. The only Dungeons and Dragons I know of, and even my dad, is the cartoon from the 1980s, where this figure is from. But our special guest, which is Brendan, he knows all about the Dungeons and Dragons, and he's gonna help me out on this figure, along with the other 2, which are coming up, which is part 2 and part 3.
Yeah, so I've played D&D for probably about 8 years now, and didn't even know about this cartoon. Came across it and found it very interesting. Now, this is a 40th edition piece. The original cartoon runs from 83 to 85. But Dungeons and Dragons actually came out in 1974. So it was almost 10 years before they made a cartoon about it. Hank is a classic character, has been around since the beginning of D&D. He's considered like a ranger and has a bow. And a little Easter egg, I guess, for those who play D&D, he comes with a D8, which is the little dice that he comes with. We'll get into more detail about that in a minute. But the reason he comes with a D8 is because a longbow does 1 D8 damage. So when he shoots the bow, that's how much damage he can deal with whatever that dice rolls. So that's just a cool little Easter egg for those who play D&D.
I did not know that. Yeah, I did not know that. I did not know that there was special bows, I guess.
Well, you have long bows, short bows, all those kind of different... There's many different weapons in D&D, and they deal different things. The difference is how far they can shoot. That's really the difference.
Okay.
And the 40 here is
That's the anniversary.
Yes.
That is the commemorative of the anniversary
Yes.
of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's what I was thinking in my
Yes.
head. So the 40 right there is the 40th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. So Dungeons and Dragons has been around for a long time. And taking a look at the box here, you can see we have the Dungeons and Dragons title here. And we also have this here, which does have these kids here,
Characters.
which are the characters here, which are riding on the roller coaster. Now this, I did saw this, because
On the cartoon.
on the cartoon.
Because the way that they represented it on the cartoon was these kids, these teenager kids, go on a roller coaster ride, and it was called Dungeons and Dragons, and it teleported them into the world of Dungeons and Dragons. So that's what happened to this group of teenagers right here. So, but we know that the role-playing game is not that away, I don't think.
No, Donnie, I don't think I've ever been on a roller coaster sucked into a game. But it is a lot of role-playing. It's a lot of fun. You basically pick your character, and you're going to really just play as them. It's the roller coaster itself in the cartoon represents when you sit down at the table, you put your life on hold. You don't worry about your day-to-day life, and you're transported into this other world, at least in your head, for a little bit, just playing. And I can attest to that. I enjoy playing D&D because I don't think about my daily life when I play. It's an escape. That's not anything that's going to harm me, as far as what other people would use to escape.
Okay. Okay. See, I understand. Okay. That's some of that representation and representing what each part represents. See, I did not know that. So, I mean, you know, that's good information. I did not know that. So, Colton, what's on the back of the package, the side, and stuff like that?
I first need to show them more of the front of the box here.
Okay.
And on this side here, we have a picture of Hank about to shoot his bow and arrow. And on here we have the action figure of Hank here. And the little die here. And on this side of the corner, it just has some warnings and plastic-free packaging, which I don't know what that means.
That means it's all cardboard.
Or that. Hasbro, ages 4 and up. Is it? And on the bottom, we have the character's name, Hank. And on the side of the box, which may need to back the camera up some, we have another picture of Hank here, and the Dungeons and Dragons roller coaster ride here, but it just shows it's the dragon's face here. And on the back we do have another picture of Hank here. The action figure here. And on this side, it shows you what he comes with. And on the bottom here, you do have your cross cells here, which we do have, like you saw in the beginning of the video. And on the on the top corner here, we have Dungeons and Dragons here. And oh, okay. Here.
Is that his bio?
No. It says figure to scale, and there's other languages that you can say of figure to scale.
Okay, well, my eyes ain't as good as what they used to be, so there's no way I can read that.
And also here it says each figure sold separately, and other languages that you can say. And here you have some attention, danger, deed, toughment.
It's a foreign language. It's just saying attention that there's hazards.
Yeah. You can't eat the box. There's nothing to eat. You're not supposed to eat any of it. It's non-edible.
We hope.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be bad.
And on the very bottom, which is really hard to see, and y'all could not see it really well, because it's all red, but you do have some words here, and some barcodes, and on the bottom, you have the same plastic-free packaging and some other languages here. And it has Hasbro and a couple of other things. And that's about it for the packaging, so I guess there's nothing left to say or nothing left to do but to crack this guy open out of the box. And we're doing it live on camera. Okay.
Right now. What you see is what you get. Colty, you want a knife or something like that?
I actually have one.
Okay. Be careful using a sharp tool. Open these boxes. Don't hurt yourself. Be very careful, mindful where your fingers are at. So, we are going to get him open. We're going to check out his articulation and his weapon. And we're also going to check out the dice. And we're going to have our special guest here help us out with the dice, even the bow. Because there's two different bows that I've seen right there. One is kind of like a, I guess what? Brendan, does he shoot out like a electrical bolt?
Yeah, so in Dungeons and Dragons, you have weapons, and then you have what they call magical weapons.
Okay. And
what the Dungeon Master does is he gives them magical weapons.
Okay.
So when you're normally just walking around with it, it just looks like a normal bow and arrow.
Okay.
But when you use it, it's magical. It has this magic bolt. It has this magic thing.
Okay.
So in the packaging, they give you two of them to represent both parts of the weapon, if it's powered up or if it's powered down. Okay. Is really what that's meaning to represent in it.
Okay. So, I guess in the game of Dungeons and Dragons, you can attack a troll? Do they have trolls?
Yeah,
in there?
you can attack anything.
Okay.
So in D&D, there's thousands of monsters, or you can attack other players if you want, or there's rival players.
Okay.
There's all kinds of things like that. And
Okay.
you have life. We call them hit points.
Okay.
It's like, let's say you have 20 hit points, right, to start out. When Hank shoots you, he's going to roll that dice.
Okay.
Whatever that number lands on, you remove from your hit points, your life. He deals 8 damage to you.
Well, how much life do you have starting out?
So everything kind of varies according to the editions and your classes and stuff like that. But I would say normally a level 1 player in life, something like that. And as you move up, it'll get better.
Okay, so you mean to tell me if you can upgrade your weapons?
Yes.
Okay, if you can upgrade your weapons, that means that you can start out with a regular bow and arrow and go up to the... Is that the most strongest bow and arrow that a ranger can have?
They have all kinds of different magical items and then all different kinds of bows and things like that. It's really up to, we call them dungeon masters, game masters, whatever you know them as. They can make their own.
Okay, so they pretty much hold all the cards and the rules.
Yes.
You're just there in imagination to pretty much play the game, to see how it's going to go.
The best way to think, I think, of Dungeons and Dragons is the dungeon master is telling a story that you're playing in.
Okay.
He has a story written and adventures and things like that, and you're just playing in it.
Okay.
And that's really what you're doing.
Okay.
He controls everything, and you're just seeing it's ad-libbed. How far can you push it? What can we do?
Okay.
And I think it's really good for people to role play sometimes in a game like Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Very good. Very good. So, Colton, do we have Hank out of the box? So,
Yes.
that is what Hank looks like, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are we ready for Hank's little lineup here?
Hank's little lineup, like,
Yes, like the review. That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Now, Hank, if I remember right, he in the cartoon was more the leader of the whole group. That's what I picked up from Hank's personality and persona. It's kind of like the group didn't know which way to go without his lead. And sometimes he regret being a leader, which sometimes, and I can put myself to testify to that, because sometimes you're always asking yourself, am I good enough? Did I do right? Did I did right by these people? Did I, So sometimes you're always self-questioning yourself sometimes. So I can kind of fit his personality in my past. So Colton, let's see the review of Hank and his action figure, what he can do and what he has to offer.
okay. So here we have Hank open and out of his packaging. And I will have to say, right off the bat, the sculpting of Hank looks exactly like what he does in the cartoon. And the painting on it looks like it's really crisp and clean. Yeah, the painting on it is really nicely crisp and clean. And the eyes on him do look really nice. And even the hair does look really nice here. And for his I'm trying to like figure out what he's wearing.
So he's wearing a traditional like medieval tunic, if you would, in medieval times.
Oh, okay. So he's wearing like a medieval tunic.
Yes.
He's okay. And as you can see, it does have some silver painted in. I forgot what these are called.
They're just kind of like metal beads or something to decorate it just a little bit. The important thing when you look at Hank, his class is a ranger. And the reason he's an all green, even though it's different shades of green, rangers are like your hunters in the woods. They're going to be hiding in the trees, in the tall grass, and things like that. So it's more of a camouflage outfit for him as a ranger. So he's more of like a hunter or something like that. So this is D&D's version of camouflage.
Okay.
Okay.
And he does have a nice painted in belt here with some brown and silver paint here. And going down to his arms, you do have a lot of wrinkles on these sleeves here, and his hands here do look nice. And going down to his legs, he is wearing the green jeans or pants. Yeah. And his boots do have some green on the top here, which is like a lime green with some black or brown.
Now his boots, let me ask you this, his boots are brown. Do they overlap? Are they folded down? That's his boots on the top part folded down, right?
Yeah, so with these kind of costumes and stuff like that, think of like a pirate's boot. When you see people dress up like pirates and they have the top of the boot kind of folds down.
Yes. It's
kind of that design.
Okay, okay. I was wondering why. I was thinking that was his boots overlay, but I wasn't sure.
And you too have some like peg holes on the bottom of his feet, which he does not come with an included stand from what I saw. And here's the side view here.
He kind of reminds me of Robin Hood. Now, on the back of his backside, is that a hood that he can pull over his head?
Yes. So another big thing with these, you got to think if you want to be camouflaged and you want to hide, blonde hair might stick out in the bushes.
True.
So you're going to want to have a hood or something like that you can cover yourself with, to where your enemies, or even if you're just hunting for food in the game or something, they don't, blonde hair is really going to stick out.
Yeah, and he's right. And I got to looking at that and I was like, that looks like a hood. But let me ask, because I'm not sure, that may be a part of his outfit, but now since it's confirmed, that is a hood. that he can pull over his head. Although I don't remember him pulling it over in the cartoon.
No.
But it's good to have that information to know that that is a hood part that he can pull over his head.
Okay, so like y'all heard, that this green part is a hood. But, and as you can see, it's just a solid piece of plastic here, which means it doesn't go over his head.
So, all in all, I mean, what do you think? I think he looks pretty good as far as the cartoon. His eyes are blue, right, Colton? His eyes are blue? They should be blue.
Yes, I think they are.
Okay, his eyes should be blue. Okay, so what else do you want to say before we get off and do articulation?
Overall, he looks like a really cool little action figure, and he has some different shades of green on him. We just have normal green and a lime green.
Yeah.
So, Brendan, what do you think about him?
You know, I think it's always been kind of funny when you sit down at a D&D table and someone says, I'm playing Ranger, and they describe their character. You get one of two things. You either get Legolas from Lord of the Rings, or you get Hank from Dungeons and Dragons. that is what their character is going to look like. And it's an iconic look. I played in a game probably about a year ago. This is exactly what the Ranger looked like. This is exactly what he tried to do as far as the bow and all that. So it's an iconic look. It is in everybody's mind and memory of what a Ranger is. 40 years later, people still show up to a game and say, well, my character's like Hank.
Okay. All right. Okay. So it surpassed generations to where we are today. You know, so that's amazing in itself.
Yeah.
So something that started and here we are today still talking about it. Kind of like Transformers, GoBots and stuff like that, but you can't forget Dungeons and Dragons was an important part of that culture too.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really cool because I sit down at a lot of games and it's not one age group that's at that table. I've played with men in their 50s. Wow. I've played 40s, 30s, high school kids. I had a dungeon master one time in his 60s.
Wow.
So it's really a game that all these different age groups come together, and that's where you learn about this cartoon, or you learn about what D&D was in the 70s and the 80s compared to what it is now. So it's a cool melting pot of different decades of players coming together at one table.
Right. Okay. I see. Okay, well, what about the articulation of Hank, Colton?
That's what I was about to get to. So for his articulation, had I'm trying to see if it'll move. I don't know if it'll move. It is kind of stiff on mine.
You know, I think the way that they designed this, and you can elaborate on this, in the 80s, the toys didn't move as much as they do now. So maybe it's a throwback design where maybe the head doesn't turn full, 360 like we can see now.
Yeah, that could very well be. That could very well be, because the articulation from the past is not the same articulation of today. There's more articulation in the stuff today compared to the 1980s that we had. So that's very true. And and then again, he just may need to be played and lived with a little.
Yeah.
So,
I would like it if they did do a throwback design to this figure, because you take the Transformers from the 80s versus the ones now. Oh, there you go.
Oh, okay. The paint was kind of
stiff. It was.
Yes.
Yeah.
He just had some like paint stuck on his head. But his head can rotate all the way around, yes.
Oh, he can go all the way.
But the hair does kind of get in the way. And even the hoodie on him. And he can look up and down a little bit. And I don't know if it's on a ball joint. I'm trying to see if it is. Oh, yes. I think it is on a ball joint.
Yes, it is on a ball joint. It's just in sync with his outfit.
And his arms do rotate all the way around, but this part does hinder it, and this is made out of a flexible material.
Yes, and the cuts on the side let you raise his arm out. I bet. Yeah, that's the reason for the cuts on the side, so this way he can have movement going out like he's reaching for something. Yes.
But on the back, it's just attached to his back, but these things on the sides are made out of a flexible material.
Yes.
And the arms do they do move in and out.
About that far. I wouldn't try and stress it anymore. Somewhere around that range right there.
And does he have a... No, I don't think he doesn't have a bicep swivel. And the elbows do have an elbow swivel. And of course they can bend at the elbow.
Yeah, he's just stiff.
I'm not gonna force this elbow here.
Is there articulations in the wrist?
Yes. He does have wrist swivel on both of them. Ball joint at the waist. He can arch back a little bit and crunch a little bit. And Does he have a...
I don't know if he has a waist pivot. He may not, because the way his unit... No, he doesn't. He has that ab crunch. That's the only articulation. Now, on the sides, I see the same cut on the sides. That means that his legs should be able to move out some. Yes, just like his arms.
And the skirt here is again made out of that same flexible material here.
Now, we call it a skirt, but like Brendan was correcting us, he said it's a tunic.
A tunic.
So that's what he's wearing.
And the legs do move forward about there, and they can move back about
that far. Yeah, about that far right there. That's the articulation you're going to get on the back side.
And they can move in and out.
Yes.
And does he have a thigh swivel? No, he doesn't. Double jointed knee.
Yeah, it's stiff.
He does have a double jointed knee, but one of these is really stiff. And the feet can move up and down, and you do have an ankle pivot.
And that's good for the range of positions that you can get them in. And that looks pretty good. Okay. So I think that they pretty much got it good as far as Hank, the cartoon of the Dungeons and Dragons. I was supposed to say Double Dragon. I think some of y'all knew where I was going with that. Dungeons and Dragons, Hank looks pretty good. So what about his weapons? And this is where we need some help and clarification from our guest host, because we don't know what we're looking at.
So, the accessory that he comes with is this bow and arrow here. And you can have him hold it in his hand, and I don't know if it's an easy fit. Well, it actually goes in his grabbing hand a lot better.
Yeah, so what this bow is in the package to represent is just a classic bow. It's not being used. He's just walking around with it. And that's really what, if you just want it on the shelf without it being in action, this is the bow that you would use.
And he does... Okay. He does come with another bowing arrow, and it's this kind here, where it does have this little pointing tip here, like he's ready to fire out his bowing arrow. So you can either like display him with the bowing arrow without the tip here, or you can display him with the tip here, like he's ready to fire it out.
Yeah, I think they included both of these of how you wanted to display them all together. If you wanted them to kind of be in a fighting stance, or if you wanted them just in their walking around casual stance, it's just according to how you wanted to display them on your shelf is why they included both weapons in this figure.
I'm gonna go ahead and have him hold the bow and arrow with without that pointing tip, because like you saw, that this elbow joint here on this arm is really kind of stiff. And there we have Hank with his bowing arrow here.
Okay, now with that said, we need to bring in the dice right quick so this way our guest can give us some knowledge on the dice, why it's, what it represents, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so this is a D8. So in Dungeons & Dragons, you're going to have 7 dice. And we're going to go over 3 of them today. This is a D8, is what it's called. It's a damage-dealing dice. So when Hank would shoot something in the cartoon, you would then roll this dice, and that was how much damage Hank dealt to that creature. And it's the same as it is today. They roll extremely easy if you want to give it a roll. Just like you would normal dice. Just roll it. Boom. Hank dealt 1 damage to that foe. Okay. And the max you can do is 8. And that's really what D&D comes down to, is dice rolling and role playing.
Okay.
So Hank could have either just taken out the enemy or dealt 1 damage to the enemy. It's whatever that dice rolls on. It's a game of dice rolling.
Okay.
And we'll get into a little bit more of the effects of the dice with the later characters. Especially Diana has the prominent dice that you're going to play with. Okay. But this was included with Hank because the bow deals 1d8.
Okay.
And so that was kind of a pretty cool thing to feature with him.
Okay. Okay, so this dice is specifically made for the Ranger only.
No, so this dice, every class is going to have one. You're going to have all 7 dice no matter what you play. But the D8 is predominantly used for the Ranger. Not solely used for it, but for any ranged weapon, like a bow or anything like that, that would be the dice for the damage, which is generally what that's going to be used for in the game.
Okay. Okay, I got a better understanding now. Okay, I see. Alrighty.
So, that's basically what the die here is for.
Yes. So what I really enjoy about what they did with these sets, because we have 3 more left to come, but just the ones we have, if you get all of them, you have a set of D&D dice.
Okay.
So if you've purchased all the figures, you can go play D&D with the dice that are provided.
Oh.
I thought that was a really cool touch they put in with the figures.
Okay. I see. I see. So, see there, guys? If you get all the characters, you get the dice, and then you can go play Dungeons & Dragons. And I did not know that, and I'm glad that I found that out, because now I understand a little bit more. And as we go through these characters, we'll understand more and more about the dice and the characters. So, Colton, what do you want to add? And before we do our final thoughts, is there anything else that you want to add or take away?
So, my final thoughts for the figure itself here.
Okay.
Overall, the figure does look really accurate to how he looks in the cartoon. But we're only talking about the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon from the 1980s show. But a couple of problems I have with it is the articulation. When you get this figure, be careful of how you're moving his joints around. I don't know if all of them have that same issue. I think that they probably do.
Okay, with that said, we're going to get to our final thoughts here in a minute.
Okay, so stay tuned. So, there you have the Dungeons and Dragons Hank figure. And overall, a really cool looking figure for what it is. And it is like accurate to what he is in the Dungeons and Dragons 1980s cartoon. But my only problem with him is some of the articulation of this figure. I don't know if all of them have it, but I think all of them do have it. Is that some of the articulation does feel really kind of stiff when you get this figure, and along with the others. And another problem I have with it, and it's just my opinion, is I wish he came with some interchangeable hands, like some swappable hands. And I think that's all of. Well, I don't think I have any problems with him. Just a couple.
Okay, now my final thoughts on it is he represents Hank really good from the 1980s cartoon Dungeons and Dragons. He looks almost spot on. But here, I agree with Colton. You know, the hands might have been swappable if we have more hand accessories where they can pull out the wrist. It give you a little bit more articulation and more options. Now, as far as the figure looks really good. The figure looks really good. They did a good job representing the Dungeons and Dragons Hank from the 1980s cartoon. And I do remember this as I was a kid watching it. And the first time when I saw it, it was like, this is different. I've never seen this before. Now, if you remember, this was in 1983 when this first came out. So this was actually pre-Transformers by 1 year. In 1983, we had the GoBots. The Challenge of the GoBots come on the scene, along with Dungeons and Dragons. So this was pre-1 year Transformers. And like I said, this ran from 1983 to about 1985. Then they started showing reruns of Dungeons and Dragons later on. So I do remember this cartoon. I liked the cartoon, but as far as me being a Dungeons and Dragons fan, I knew of the game. I knew of the people playing it. As far as me, I never experienced it, so therefore I don't know. All I know is the cartoon. As far as my final thoughts, they did a good job with Hank. Looks really good from the cartoon. I have no complaints with it. And now I'm going to let our guest speaker have his final thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think they did Hank justice with this figure. I think re-releasing it to a whole new audience. I think what you were picking up on the articulation is that I think they're releasing these for either people to put in a display case or on a shelf or to play with. So I think kind of like with the head, the more you play with it, the looser those joints are going to get. But like as for me, I actually have these 3 figures out of the box in my trophy case in my D&D room. So I have them kind of like we have him now. And he's going to stay like that forever. You know, so those joints don't have to be so loose for what I'm doing with them. But I think on final thoughts, I think they did a really good job of the figure. I think my favorite thing, though, is the dice. I think if I was to pick one thing I really like is the dice, because then it allows you to go play Hank in a game. You can experience that and really kind of play his character and maybe get you into a game where you create your own person, like how they made Hank. But I think for the figure, I think it looks really good, realistic to what a D&D figure would be if they made toys of it. And so, I don't think there's any complaints I have about it.
Okay. All right. Well, there we go. We have our all 3 final thoughts, and now we are going to check out the next one. So I'm going to let Colton wrap it up. Y'all take care. We'll see y'all next time. We appreciate y'all. And we will see y'all here in a little while.
And if you like this video, give us a like, comment, and subscribe for more. And if you want to check out some other videos you may have missed, there's a playlist set up on my YouTube channel. So I think that's about it. So thanks for watching.